Good afternoon, everyone. It's Liam Neild here with the MU review for Manchester United's 1-0 victory over Norwich City at Carrow Road in the Premier League. And my God, was that an ugly game of football. That was dreadful to watch. Absolutely dreadful. Neither side looked like it had any sort of ability. We looked like we were mid-table. They looked like they were mid-table in the Championship, which they probably will be next season. And all in all, it was just an absolutely dire game of football to watch. And had we not won it, I would be in a much worse mood. But thankfully, we got over the line. We got the 3 points, and at this stage of the season, that is all that counts. That is gold dust. And we may have condemned Norwich to relegation. Fine. I've never had too much of a sentimental attachment to Norwich. I do like Stephen Fry. I do like Ed Sheeran, who is from Norwich, although I'm told he supports Newcastle United. But apart from that, they mean nothing to me. Bugger off to the Championship, where you probably belong, because you've not been good enough all season. That being said, let's talk about the game. I think a lot of the game changed before the kickoff, in fact. I think that Van Gaal's decision to rotate players for being in the red zone, as he would call it, for having played lots of games, not a bad idea by any stretch of the imagination, especially when we've got a massive game coming up against our, proverbial top four, at least top five rivals, West Ham, coming up on Tuesday, which is going to be a really difficult game. I think it was, probably the right decision to maximise the use of the squad that we do have at our disposal. Apart from Bastian Schweinsteiger and Luke Shaw, we've actually got a fully fit squad for the first time probably since September. So we're going to use that in this run-in, and he, tried to use it today. He's finally settled on a formation, 4-1-4-1. It seems to work pretty well for us, at least with the sheer overload of defensive midfielders that we have in the form of, Schneiderlin, Carrick, Schweinsteiger when he's fit, Fosu Mensah can play there. So 4-1-4-1 really does suit us. The problem is that the starting lineup as it was, he gave Memphis a chance, which I was very happy with, even though Memphis didn't really do much with his chance, as he hasn't all season, to be perfectly honest. But he started Martial up front because he wanted to give Rashford a rest, and he's also obviously with Maro and Fellaini being suspended for the rest of the season, just like he was towards the end of last season. I think it was the last game he got a straight red card and missed our first month of this season. So we needed to bring in new players. So he brings in more. He brings in Ander Herrera. But the real issue for me was the positioning of the players that he did play, because when Martial was supposed to be playing up front in replacement for Rashford, it's a like for like really. Martial is better than Rashford. And he can play that position as well as playing on the left. Yeah, he does like to have the ball to feet more, but he is a very effective striker, and long term that's where you do see him playing with the number 9 on his back for Manchester United. But the issue today was, after Martial pulled up in the warm-up, hopefully it's not too serious, hopefully it's something he can, shake off before the match on Tuesday, or at very least before our last game of the season against Bournemouth next Sunday, which could yet prove to be a pivotal game in our season. But him getting taken out really messed us up, because it would have been one thing if, like the last time Martial got injured in a warm-up, Marcus Rashford could step up, come off the bench and bag a brace. For those of you who don't remember, that was his debut against Midtjylland. He was not meant to be playing in that game. You think he was our 4th or 5th choice striker at the beginning of the season, not even playing for the under-21s, and ended up, where he is now, due to Martial pulling up in the warm-up. But the problem was that Martial was already playing centre-forward to cover for the fact that Rashford had been given a few days off by Van Gaal, and so we had to adjust, and that meant moving Rooney, who has been excellent since he returned from injury, playing in central midfield, moving him back up front, where he is about as effective as a condom in a third world country. I suppose condoms in third world countries would be effective. Don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, moving on. Wayne Rooney is very ineffective as a centre-forward. That being said, he did provide an excellent assist to score the goal in the game, so maybe everything I say is complete bollocks. But in general, anyone who's watched United this season can tell you Wayne Rooney does not do the same job up front that Martial does, that Rashford does. He doesn't get in behind. That being said, he did get in behind that one time to score the goal. Anyway, moving that to the side. Generally speaking, Wayne Rooney doesn't get in behind. He's not got the pace. He tries to come forward for the ball to feet, and thus allows the Norwich defence, or the opposition defence in any case, to play with facing us. We have to get around their defence entirely. There's no forward running when Wayne Rooney is your centre forward, and that is why, attacking wise, we were so awful today, was because we didn't have the outlet in Rashford or Martial, and we didn't even have the player on the wing like we've come accustomed to. We have become accustomed to seeing Marcus Rashford making those runs in behind, drifting wide, getting in behind the back four to make runs for us, playing centre forward. But we've also had a player like Martial, who's been our best player this season, save for David De Gea and maybe Chris Smalling, bringing the ball to feet and running at the opposition. Two big misses for us today. And Memphis, in theory, for 31 million quid, should be able to do all those same jobs that Martial does. When Martial stands up against a fullback, he can take him down the river 9 times out of 10. He can do the exact same move every time and still take him down the river every single time. Memphis Depay, for 31 million quid, you'd expect him to be able to drift past a Norwich fullback, a Norwich defender, who, let's be honest, they're a bit like daffodils. They look really pretty, wearing yellow and green on a nice grass pitch, but ultimately they just sit there and drift in the wind and do fuck all for 90 minutes. And Memphis Depay was getting stood up like a 13-year-old girl at a dance, And it just frustrates me with him, because he's supposed to be this fantastic player. Many people have tipped him as a future World Player of the Year. Not on that fucking performance. He's not the future Championship Player of the Year on that performance. But anyway, he's young. I'll give him time. He's had flashes of brilliance this season. That game against Bruges still in mind. Good goal against Norwich. He's had flashes here and there. The game against Midtjylland where, Rashford came in, he was brilliant there. But he needs to pick it up on a regular basis. And no matter who the manager is next season, Memphis Depay's got some questions to answer. Van Gaal has been criticised for not giving Depay an opportunity, and he gave him one today, and he blew it again. And he needs to look himself in the mirror and figure out what's gone wrong, and he needs to address those issues in the summer. He's not going to be doing much, considering the Netherlands didn't qualify for the fucking Euros. So he needs to, go on his holidays for a month, think about what he's done this season, and come back and try and, live up to the price tag and live up to the hype, because right now it's just not good enough. But anyway, after that little tangent, we can continue to talk about this game. The first half, the really disheartening thing about this game for me, at least in the first half and mostly in the second half as well, was how similarly we play to Norwich. The two teams were cancelling each other out. No one was making any opportunities. Norwich missed a sitter in the first half, and Chris Smalling, in my opinion, also missed a sitter from 2 yards with a header. But we weren't creating any opportunities because both teams lacked ideas and creativity going forward. Now Norwich haven't scored a goal, I think, in 6 games. We're Man United. We're supposed to be battling for Champions League football, and we're playing with the attacking intensity of Norwich City. That is a huge problem, and that is something that we need to address. I mean, yes, this was an off day for us. Yes, things had to get moved around because Martial was injured, Rashford was rested. That changed our game. I get it. But still, with the players we have, we should be playing better than we were playing today, especially in an attacking sense. Defensively, I thought we were all right, but that being said, what did we really have to do? It's the same thing about Norwich. The only reason Norwich didn't keep a clean sheet today is because Sebastian de Song made one mistake by going up he pulled a Gary Cahill and misjudged an aerial ball. Rooney got in behind and scored a goal. That being said, Mata's match winner. Once again, he's had a hot and cold season, Juan Mata. He goes from being our key man to being completely anonymous on the turn of a dime. And I attribute that mostly to Louis van Gaal playing him out of position. Because ultimately, no matter how good you are, if you're not playing in an area of the pitch where your skills are highlighted, for Juan Mata, that being his ball control, his vision, his passing range, and even his shooting ability to a certain extent, playing him out wide right when he's got no pace and no right foot is terrible, terrible decision-making by the management, especially when you've got a player like Jesse Lingard, who is a winger, who does have pace, but who doesn't have the best ball control, and maybe hasn't got the best decision-making. Playing him in the middle when you've got Mata out wide, it makes no sense, But Juan Mata, fair credit to him, he's still managed to come up with the winner, and he's done that a couple of times this season, He's not been the maverick that we all thought he might be when he came from, during the Moyes season. But then again, what can he do in a situation where he's being played out of position? Considering he's been played on the right wing, if he's been played at all for most of the season, the fact that he's got 9 goals in all competitions, 6 in the Premier League, is not a bad return. And considering the fact that Juan Mata got the winning goal against Watford in a game where we were outplayed at Old Trafford, and we were at 0-0 with 10 minutes to go, and he scores a beautiful free kick to win that game and pick up points that we really desperately needed at that time. He's done it again today, in a game where we were piss poor, in a game where Norwich could have won, in a game where 0-0 probably would have been a fair result based on the match that we watched. He pops up, albeit after a lot of good work from Rooney. He follows up, and with a clinical finish. And you can see that he is one of the few players who has a lot of passion for this club. Ander Herrera, Juan Mata, Chris Smalling, David De Gea, players who really show that they care about Manchester United. And obviously all the young players as well, Rashford, Lingard, Fosu Mensah, players who have come through our academy. They know what it means to be a Man United player. Anthony Martial knows what it means to be a Man United player. I'm not even sure our captain, Wayne Rooney, gives a shit about Man United. in the way that Juan Mata and Ander Herrera and all those other names I mentioned do. But Juan Mata pops up with the goods. He gets us the winning goal, and it's 3 massive points. You can't undersell it. I mean, we've been abominable for most of this season. We've had a few decent games here and there, but all in all, we've been shite. Let's be honest. We've been absolutely wank all season. And the fact that we're even still in the fight for the top 4 amazes me. It just shows you how ridiculously open the Premier League's been this season, with City making the semi-finals of the Champions League in Europe, doing really well, beating Paris Saint-Germain, beating Sevilla away from home, who are probably going to go do a job on Liverpool in the Europa League final, or at least I hope they do, But then when they're in the league, they can't. They drew 0-0 at Carrow Road. Now, I'm not going to, take the piss, because we probably should have drawn 0-0 today. But City have done just as much to throw away 4th place as we've done to throw away everything else. And the fact that we're still in it gives me a little bit of hope, especially with an FA Cup final around the corner. Because all in all, top 4 in an FA Cup, if you'd offered me that at the start of the season, I'd have said, you know what, yeah, why not? Competitive league. Finishing in the top 4 in a season when teams like Chelsea, have been completely rubbish. With teams like City have dropped off the boil, Arsenal have bottled it again, Leicester have won the fucking Premiership title. Tottenham Hotspur in the top 2. Finishing top 4 this season with an FA Cup. That's a result. I'm alright with that. I'm not saying it's success by any stretch of the imagination. Being a Man United fan, success can only be classified as winning the league and winning the Champions League. That is success for a Man United player or for a Man United squad. But given our limitations and given how big of a hole we look like we've been in this season at times, 4th place would be a miracle. Now, that being said, it's a lot more to do. There's 4 games, ultimately, that are going to decide whether we get 4th or not. And that ultimately is our last 2 games and City's last 2 games. City play tomorrow against Arsenal at the Etihad, and my heart says that they're gonna bottle it and that Arsenal are gonna win it or draw or something. But my head is saying that City, after getting knocked out of the Champions League, facing the realization that they are not going to be in Champions League next year if they fuck up anymore, are probably going to do a job on Arsenal. It might not be pretty. It might be 1-0, 2-1, but I think they'll get the 3 points, and then maybe it will be a bit much for us to do. But I'll come back to the talk of the top 4 later. During this match, we got over the line, simple as. We weren't very good. Probably should have scored another one late on when Norwich were trying to pump balls forward and catch us out. They did not look like they had any threat at all, any motivation to beat us today. And we didn't look like we had much motivation ourselves. I mean, Schneiderlin probably should have scored when he came off the bench. Herrera missed a sitter where he shot, but he probably could have passed it, all sorts. It doesn't matter ultimately. Got the 3 points, we got a clean sheet, move on. Let's go to West Ham on Tuesday and hopefully do a job on them. A man of the match, Juan Mata. I mean, who else could it be? He's the only player who looked like he was trying to pull anything off, Herrera and Mata were the only 2 who really looked like they were buzzing today. Herrera was the only one trying to make runs in behind. Mata was, ever present, trying to get the ball when he was isolated on the right hand side. Jesse Lingard did fuck all. I don't know what the hell he's doing to stay in the team. At least in that position, I can see him doing a job playing wide. If ultimately this is what my whole problem with LVG comes down to, is his complete stubbornness over player positioning, because he's Dutch and he's an old Dutchman, which makes me think that he's inclined to want to play that Johan Cruyff Ajax style of total football, which we just can't do in the Premier League, at least not with the players we've got, because what he expects his players to all be able to play a handful of positions. And yes, Juan Mata can function as a right midfielder, but it severely limits his game. It severely underpays him on the talent that he does have and expects more of him in areas where he is deficient, and that is just poor management in my eyes. I think if you've got a team sheet laid out where you are starting a midfield of Mata, Herrera, Lingard, we'll ignore Carrick for now, and Depay, it's very obvious to me. You play Lingard and Depay wide, you play Mata and Herrera in the middle. Simple. Really, really simple. I don't understand how much he's getting paid to not see that, because that is just playing Lingard in the middle of Mata. Who does that? Who does that? Playing Wayne Rooney up front, albeit he is a striker. I'd rather see Memphis Depay play up front, to be completely honest. I really would. Wayne Rooney did a job today with the goal, but apart from that, he was rubbish. Let's be honest, he didn't do anything, and I don't blame him for that. The fact that when he did get his opportunity, he created the goal for Mata. shows that he is a decent player who is on decent form, but he's being played out of position. Juan Mata, good player, on decent form, being played out of position, minimising the effectiveness of our, attacking line. I did think, however, on a positive note, defensively, we were sorted out today. He's given Blind a rest, thank God. We've been crying out for that poor man to get given a rest for the last month or two. He's played like 60 games this season at centre-back, out of position as well, and he's played brilliantly there. He is a fantastic footballer, a great example of Dutch total football, someone who can play probably any position on the pitch. If you trained him for 2 hours to do it, he could do it. And he's been playing really, really well for us this season, but he needed a rest. And he puts Rojo at centre-half. Thank you, Louis, for finally admitting that Marcus Rojo's not a left-back. He is a centre-back. And guess what? He played okay. Wouldn't you know it? You play a man in his natural position, on his natural side, and he puts in a shift. Who would have fucking thought that? Like, you just don't understand what goes through the man's head. Like, during the game, the commentators made a comment saying, sometimes I do struggle to understand Louis van Gaal's thinking. You and me both, mate. You, me, and every other Man United fan and every other football fan who has watched United this season. It is so frustrating to have a manager that is supposedly top class, that is a European Cup winner, a proven, successful manager, to come in and make decisions that you wonder what game he's watching, what players he thinks he has, because he just doesn't seem to get it. But that being said, hopefully, I'm not saying that Rojo should start over Blind. I'm just saying Rojo shouldn't play left back. And the fact that he plays centre back and plays well proves that he is an able centre back who you could play there. I would argue that Rojo is a more adept centre back, at least naturally, than Daley Blind is, because he's got the strength and he's got the heading ability that Daley Blind doesn't really have. Daley Blind can play left back. I've seen him do it. He did it for Holland under Van Gaal, but he plays him centre back and puts Rojo at left back. It just doesn't make any sense. Chris Smalling was a colossus again. Darmian was unlucky to go off injured, but it doesn't look like he's playing again this season. And all in all, if I'm going to eulogise Darmian's first season, not bad. Not anything that we didn't expect, let's be honest. I'd never heard of the bloke when we transferred him in. He did get a bit overhyped at the start of the season because he started really well playing for us at right back, and I think we had a much better balance in the team at the start of the season when we had Shaw and Depay operating down the left-hand side, when we had Darmian, who is a natural right back, playing right back with two centre-halves. I thought we started the season quite well like that. Darmian dropped off. He's had a couple of injuries. But all in all, as a guy who was brought in to be a backup to Antonio Valencia, he's done all right this season. But that being said, Borthwick Jackson came on. The commentators were ripping into him for being a bit casual on the ball. And I think the only that really can be written off as him not having played first-team football for months. I don't know why he hasn't, because he's been fit for a while and he's been playing under-21s. He's been playing well in the under-21s. But it's a very different pace, and I think you give him, and he didn't even think he was starting. He wasn't even starting today. So I think you give him a starting role like we did back around February, March, January even. He can show what he can do. He's a great crosser of the ball. I'm not worried about Borthwick Jackson. But anyway, I'm running a bit long here. We're getting to that point in the season where I just can't help but not only talk about the game itself, but talk about the bigger picture of what we've seen this season, what we need to do now, and how we move forward from here. But ultimately, going back to what I was saying about the top four, I've been jumping around a bit. There's 4 games that are going to decide the season. Our last 2 games and City's last 2 games. Now, we've got an FA Cup final in the bag, an FA Cup final that we should be winning. Not saying we will win it, because we're United. Who knows? We could lose to anyone on any given day. We could also beat anyone on any given day. We'll just have to wait and see. But having that in the bank is a good motivator for the players, because it means that even if City do win at Arsenal and our title or top 4 chances peter out in the last couple of games here, we still have something to keep us motivated and keep us going. And with us playing West Ham away, you'd think, right, probably going to drop points there. I mean, you'd think that, wouldn't you? But then West Ham got stuffed 4-1 by Swansea City today. And that works for us on 2 levels. The first level it works for us on is that obviously West Ham have just been humiliated, which gives us a boost that maybe they're not at the races, maybe their season is petering out a little bit. Obviously it could go the other way and they could respond by, roaring back at us, but it also does mean that West Ham now cannot leapfrog us in the table by beating us, which if they had beaten or even drawn with Swansea, I'm pretty sure they could leapfrog us by beating us on Tuesday. Now we are secured in 5th place, whoop-de-doo, but that gives us a little bit more impetus to go and get at them. It also harms their confidence greatly to get beaten 4-1 at home. One of the last 2 home games they're playing at the Balloon Ground, mind you. And to get humiliated by Swansea, who were fighting off relegation for most of the season, that's pretty bad. But it also works for us because Manchester City's last game of the season, after they play Arsenal on Sunday, is away at Swansea City. So if Swansea have picked up form, West Ham have dropped off form, that is a good combination for us to come out of the day. We've won, West Ham have lost, and the team that is playing City on the last day of the season stuffed West Ham. So I think that's really worked out well for us. Obviously, tomorrow is a massive game. I think tomorrow, in my mind at least, will decide whether we get the top four or not. Now, I know that if it goes down to the last day, anything can happen on the last day when Man United and Man City are involved. I don't think anyone would question that. But if City win against Arsenal, I think they finish fourth, because I think that gives them the momentum to go and beat Swansea on the last day and save their blushes, finish fourth, and just forget this season ever happened and start anew with Guardiola in the summer. But they are still playing Arsenal, and Arsenal are still going to try and catch Spurs. Arsenal hate finishing below Spurs. I can't even think if it's ever happened in Premier League history that Arsenal have finished below Spurs. And I don't think that, the difference between second and third, what is it really? I don't think that's going through Arsenal's head right now. I don't think the fans, the players, the manager, everyone is focused on making sure that Spurs do not finish ahead of them. That means for them finishing second behind Leicester City, which for Arsenal technically would be an improvement. I'm taking the piss a little bit, Arsenal fans, but considering you finished fourth 2 seasons ago, third last season, if you finish second this year, you never know, you might win the league next year. No, you won't. You're never going to win the league, at least not as long as Wenger's in charge. But anyway, I digress. I reckon Arsenal are going to give it a good go, and a draw would do it for us. We don't need Arsenal to win. We just need City to not win. We need City to drop points. And for City to drop points at home to Arsenal is not that far-fetched. And considering some of the crazy points that they've dropped this season, not be surprised at all if they got stuffed 3-0 by Arsenal. Arsenal beat them at the Etihad last year, to my memory. Love them to do it again. Arsenal finish top 4, finish second, do whatever you like, Arsenal. I don't care. I just want City to come close enough to where we can leapfrog them. And right now, we're close. We're 1 point behind. Even games, 2 games to play. If City lose tomorrow, City drop points tomorrow, and it's in our hands, I'm confident. I really am. Because at that point, yes, we have to beat West Ham away. And let's not forget we still have to beat Bournemouth at home. And no game is a given in the Premier League this year. Especially not with United. I'm not going to sit here and say if we beat West Ham and City don't beat Arsenal, then we're definitely top 4. We're not. We've still got to beat Bournemouth on the last day. But if you think about it, with an FA Cup final around the corner, when we're on a streak like we are on, spare the Leicester game, we've only dropped 4 points in the last month and a half, and that was the 3-0 against Spurs and then the 1-1 with Leicester. That is not bad considering that is the top 2 in the league. We're coming into a bit of form. Yes, we're still playing quite badly, but results-wise, we're coming into form. And this is a good time to come into form right at the end of the season. And with City, maybe having a little bit of jet lag from the Champions League defeat, humiliation really. I know it was only 1-0, but honestly they were never in that game. To come off of that and then have to play a game against an Arsenal team who hasn't played a game since last weekend, who are fresh and fit, I could see Arsenal doing a job on City. And if they do that, we can then go beat West Ham, be 2 points clear of City or a point ahead of City, whatever it ends up being, with a game to play at home to Bournemouth. I fancy us. And if we can finish top 4 and win the FA Cup, and most importantly of all, City don't finish in the top 4, I forget everything bad that's happened this season. 2016's been good at that point. I'm happy. I am happy at that point. But obviously, that is still a long way away. Now, if anybody in the entire world has sat through me talking for 25 minutes here, well done. That is impressive. One day I might get married, and I don't expect my future wife to be able to listen to me ramble on for this long, especially about football. So anyone who's done it, you're the real MVP. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. I'm starting to get longer and longer winded in these. Wouldn't expect that to change. We're getting to the point in the season where there's a lot to unpack, and Tuesday can't come quick enough. I'm really looking forward to playing at the Boleyn Ground. I think it'll be a good atmosphere, and win, lose or draw, it'll be a good game to send off a great stadium in Upton Park. My cousin Jack is a West Ham fan. I'm sure it'll be quite emotional for him and every other West Ham fan on the planet, and hopefully we can make it more emotional for them when we stuff them 6-0. Let's see what happens. Thanks for watching. Good night.